Welcome back to Light the Fuse, the only Mission Impossible podcast on the internet, and by default, the best.
Yes.
Drew Taylor here once again, joined by Charles Hood.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the episodes of the TV show, episodes 4 through 7. And how you feeling about these episodes?
I think they're pretty good. I think I like some more than others,
right?
Which we'll talk about. I also want to I wish I did this in the first episode about the show, but I wanted to bring up that this show, how critically acclaimed it was when it came out.
Okay.
I want to talk about the Emmys that this show won and was nominated for. Barbara Bain, who plays Cinnamon Carter, won Best Actress in a Leading Role 3 years in a row for the first 3 seasons of the show. And the show also won Best Dramatic Series for its first 2 seasons.
I had no idea any of that.
And then also Bruce Geller won for Outstanding Writing in a Drama Series for Season 1.
Do you think this podcast has any
chance of winning an Emmy?
Yeah,
no,
or any.
I don't think we're eligible. If
what
we
about,
were, we'd win them all.
Yeah, what about like a potty or something?
Did they have potties?
I don't know.
Maybe we should start the potties.
Yeah.
They probably do. Also, insanely, Lalo Schifrin was nominated 3 times for the first 3 seasons for the music, but never won, which is crazy. They also had a bunch of other nominations at the Emmys for editing and production design, and Peter Graves, he's Jim Phelps in the later seasons 2 through 7, and Greg Morris, who plays Barney, and Martin Landau, who is Roland Hand. They were all nominated. Landau was nominated 3 times, and every time he did not win, but his wife, Barbara Bain, took home 3 trophies.
Wow.
So do you think that caused tension at home?
I think so, but maybe it was like kind of an opportunity for them to grow and learn things about each other.
Hopefully he was really a good supportive husband about it.
Yeah, I think
Their marriage lasted about 25 years.
Oh, wow.
So
But they divorced, or one of them
they divorced. They
okay.
divorced. I think she's still alive, and he passed away just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Right? I picture them like going to In-N-Out maybe after the Emmys.
Yeah.
She's got hers, and he's coming home empty-handed. I don't know. Yeah, and then I don't know. Do you want to hear about the Golden Globes?
Yeah. Do you have to ask? Yeah, of course I want to hear about the Golden Globes.
So both Martin Landau and Peter Graves won 1 each, and the show won Best Drama TV Series once.
But no Barbara Bain. So Landau could have been like,
yeah, check out my Golden Globe.
Yeah.
And then also, I want to get people excited about future seasons of this show because the cast members in later seasons include Leonard Nimoy, Sam Elliott, who everybody loves. If you don't know him, search his name and you'll be like, oh my gosh, that guy, he's the best. And Leslie Ann Warren also.
Wow.
Who she was nominated for a Golden Globe in one of the later seasons.
I talked to Sam Elliott a couple of years ago. I had no idea. You know, I should have been thinking about this podcast back then and asking him
next time.
Yeah, next time.
And I mean, Leslie Ann Warren, if you know, she was Miss Scarlet in Clue.
Right.
She's nominated for an Oscar for Victor Victoria, which she's unbelievable in that movie. And she's awesome. I'm excited to see those episodes. I don't know if I've ever seen an episode with her. Like I said, I've seen the early seasons. Probably almost all of the early seasons, and I've seen a couple of episodes here and there of the later seasons. So I'm excited to when we get to that later in our.
I was going to ask you, are you excited about continuing the show?
Yeah.
Watching all of them. Okay.
You're not?
Well, the first 4 and 5. Let's just get right into it. 4 and 5.
Okay.
Not the strongest episodes.
No,
probably not.
I think they were still finding. I think it's because they were still finding their footing.
Yeah.
I was reading a little bit about this in this book that's the complete Mission Impossible dossier, and they talked about how they were trying to figure it out, and they ended up splitting this into 2 episodes. So episodes 4 and 5, which is Old Man Out,
parts 1 and 2.
Parts 1 and 2. They're a little slower, and it really should have just been 1 episode.
My hypothesis was that it was a pilot that was too boring that they just showed later in the season. That's not true?
I don't think it was the pilot.
Okay.
I think Bruce Geller had written one thing for the pilot and then wrote what ended up being the pilot, and I don't think that original story was this.
Okay.
But someone else, I think, wrote this art. I don't have the name in front of me, but Bruce Geller ended up splitting it into 2 episodes.
Yeah, and should we just run down what the kind of general plot is?
Well, so yeah, let's start with Briggs gets his mission in a closed movie theater. So we always talk about every episode where he gets where he gets the assignment. So this time he goes into a closed movie theater, and at the end, the message is they still haven't said self-destruct, right?
Right.
It's please dispose of this tape recording as directed. And then he drops it in an ashtray, which is inside the theater.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? I mean, back then there were ashtrays in movie theaters. And then when he drops it in the ashtray, it explodes.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But we always talk about the kind of secondary team members that have to be around, like the usher at the theater.
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, are they really part of the IMF, or they just kind of get paid? Does someone from the CIA or something approach them and say, look, someone's going to come to you, here's some money, we're going to pay you.
Right.
So
don't ask
who's. Yeah, they don't get to see the mission or anything, but like you're going to set this up so that when this guy comes in here and he says this code with you,
you let him in. Yeah. Don't charge him.
I don't think they all work for the CIA.
No, I mean maybe there's like a second agency that they go through.
Right.
Kind of like a casting agency. And
the IMF has like a booking agent.
Right, yeah, exactly. And they fill these kind of roles.
Yeah.
But the basic premise is they're going to, where are they even going?
Well, they're going into another foreign country to break a man out of prison. And they have to they have to recruit an IMF team member. And this was interesting. They bring in a trapeze artist, and they, through dialogue and everything, they imply that Briggs has had a relationship with her in the past. And when he first shows up, she's kind of thinking he's there for romantic reasons, and then it turns out he's there to recruit her for a mission, and she's like, no way, and he has to convince her.
And it sounds like he's tried to recruit her before. It sounded like they broke up, and then he tried to get her back, and maybe they did a mission and it didn't work out, and now he's trying again.
So this is like the most of the personal lives that the show has gotten into at all. And they go to this country, they set up this elaborate circus performance, basically.
Yes.
And Roland Hand has to, they put him into the prison on purpose. So he gets in trouble, he pickpockets somebody, and then he goes into prison on purpose so that he can break out this guy.
Right.
And in the episode 1, he goes through the whole process of breaking out this guy. And meanwhile, the IMF team is out near the prison. They're putting on this fake carnival.
Yes.
And Dan Briggs is playing on the sort of keyboard thing.
One of them's a clown, one of them's...
Yeah. And Briggs is playing on the keyboard this music for a long time. And that's where I think this episode gets kind of tedious. It's because you hear this sort of clown music.
It's the most annoying music in the world.
But I have to say, the reveal of what the purpose of the music is really smart and cool. Because Martin Landau breaks out in the first part of the episode, the part 1 of the episodes. Landau breaks out the guy, and they go up on the roof, and you think they're going to escape. And then Landau says, oh, actually, we're not going to break out today. This was just a trial run to see how long it would take.
Right, the timing of everything.
Yeah. And the whole setup of this episode, they say, you can't have watches in prison. So how are we going to time it out to find out how long it takes to do a prison break from your cell up to the roof? And then the reveal is that that's what the music was for.
Right.
So Briggs was playing the keyboard, this clown music over and over again, and then when they get up there, the old man's like, well, how could you tell? And then Martin Landau says, it was the music.
I still don't know how he would have been able to tell.
Because you could tell, because he memorized the melody and then figured out how many times it went through. And
oh my God. I'm surprised he didn't just kill himself in prison after listening to it for that long.
Yeah. So, but I think that was a really smart, cool thing.
It is also a cool way to differentiate the 2 episodes.
And then the second part, they're breaking him out for real, and everything goes wrong.
Right.
And it's cool. And I like it, too, where they have to visit Martin Landau in prison and use code words. She's visiting him and pretending to be his loved one. And Martin Landau says all these messages, and then she goes back home and they decode what he said to figure out how long it took.
Right.
So
can we talk about the kind of IMF bachelor pad meeting area at the beginning of every episode?
Sure.
I love it.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it'll probably change in the next seasons because it'll be Jim Phelps's apartment.
Okay.
But season 1 is Dan Briggs's. And I read this thing in that complete Mission Impossible dossier book where Bruce Geller said he wanted to keep everything in that apartment black and white. And he wanted to keep even the costumes of the characters black and white. And he felt like black and white in color really was very striking. Mm-hmm. And then it also created a contrast so that when you cut to the mission and the color, that it really pops. Yeah, so keep that in mind, I guess, when you watch episodes going forward.
Do you think anyone's actually going to be watching these episodes with us?
I hope so. I think there are people, we've seen people on Twitter talking about how they're watching the old episodes. It's probably a small percentage of Mission Impossible fans because I think the movies have so many fans right now.
Yeah.
People are really getting excited about Fallout. And full discretion, this episode was recorded before the week. This is the week leading up to Fallout's release.
Right. I've seen it. Charles hasn't.
Yes.
So there's a lot of contention.
I know. I'm angry with him because he's seen it and I haven't.
No. Well, what I was telling you was that I feel like maybe Rogue Nation and Fallout are sort of part 1 and 2, like these 2 episodes of the big screen, because we have the same villain, a lot of the same characters, more character similarities than differences for the first time.
I love that idea. This is like
so this is part
Rogue
2.
Nation and Fallout are like a 2-part episode.
I think so.
That's awesome.
So we're gonna move on to episode 5.
Well, before we do, so episode 5. Yeah, I wanted to talk about episode 5. I like that one of the bad guys is trying to help the cardinal. Do you remember this part?
Yes.
So they're trying to break this cardinal out of this prison.
Yes.
And there's one of the bad guys, like one of the guys who works at the prison, is actually a good guy, sort of.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's relieved when the cardinal gets out.
Right.
I thought that was cool. They had sort of a morally ambiguous villain in there who was on their side. He didn't really help ever, but he was relieved when the cardinal...
Yeah.
He wasn't in on it or anything, but he was a friend of the cardinal and wanted the cardinal to get out. I think those were probably elements that are in there because it's a 2-part episode. They had time to have these other subplots that they don't have in the other episodes.
And you were telling me that the reason that these are all fictional countries is because it was such a kind of unstable time politically in the world that they didn't want to like rock the boat or add fuel to the fire, correct?
Yes.
Which is interesting.
And I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast yet, but you and I have talked about this, the Gellerese.
Yes.
So Bruce Geller is the creator of the show, and they had this term called Gellerese, and it was a fake language that they would put on, trucks and buildings and things, and it was a fake foreign language that you could figure out if you looked at it.
People could like decode.
Yeah, so instead of gas, it would be like GAZ with a weird accent on
right.
A or something, so you'd know, oh, that's gas.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have to over-explain it, but you could figure it out.
That's really cool.
I think it's so awesome.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about the shows, and I love that they call it Gellerese.
Yeah, I mean it's very different from the movies, which they go to Russia. They're very timely in what they're talking about.
Yeah. I don't have much more I wanted to say about episode 5. However, I did want to give a special shout out to the dummy on Rollins' back. When Rollin, he sort of zip lines off the roof of the prison. With the old man, but this old man he's like a character actor who's in a lot of stuff. Like he looked very familiar.
Well, the other thing about that episode that made it so slow is he walked so slow, and I feel like half of the episode is Martin Landau walking with this old guy down a hallway.
I would say don't start with these episodes, and if you're not, I would say skip these episodes potentially if you're not loving every minute of every episode. Yeah. I think there's cool stuff in it, but it should have been 1 episode instead of 2.
Yeah.
But
the
dummy. Old man, the dummy of the old man on Rollins' back, I was pretty into. And they even had a quick flash of him during the title credits, because the title sequence had 2 different title sequences even for the 2-parter, which is cool.
Better or worse than the baby from American Sniper?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
That baby, for those of you who haven't looked this up, there's a CGI baby.
No, it's not CGI.
It's dummy. It's a dummy baby that Sienna Miller is holding.
Yeah, I think Bradley Cooper holds it too, and it's the laziest.
It is. Well, it's difficult with production to use actual babies. There are all these rules around it, laws and everything, and so they used a doll instead. And someone pointed it out, and I never noticed it the first time I saw the movie, but once someone points it out, you can't unsee it. So, I don't know which one's worse.
Okay.
What do you think's worse?
I think the baby's worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to 6, which we both really liked. 6.
Yes, I loved episode 6. This might be my... Rogosh was the one that we both...
Yeah.
Operation Rogosh, I think, which was episode 3. And this was my second favorite, I think.
Yeah.
This time, Briggs goes into an arcade, and he talks to the guy who works there, and he asks to see an early talkie.
And it is called Norma's Indiscretion. Which is sort of...
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so he asks to see an early talkie called Norma's Indiscretion.
Yeah.
The guy takes him into this back room, and there's a kinetoscope there. It's like an old-timey...
It's like a Nickelodeon or whatever.
You
crank it.
And you look in, and only one person can watch at a time. And that's how he watches the mission brief this time, which is really cool.
I like that the guy gives him the headphones, too. He's like, you gotta plug these in.
Yeah. And this time, the message is not good morning. It's good evening, Mr. Briggs.
Okay.
So we're starting to get variations there.
And what is the end of it was different, too?
This time, it goes back to this material will decompose in 5 seconds.
Right.
So they've used decompose now, and they still have not done self-destruct, right?
But I like the look on his face when it like comes out of the viewfinder. It's like, and he's like, yeah. It's like very. It was very cool.
Yeah. And then again, this time they bring in an additional IMF team member. They bring in a guy he's basically an actor, and he plays Cinnamon's husband as part of their scheme.
He's like a French kind of smooth talker.
And Briggs is not really in this episode as much.
Which we theorized.
I would imagine it's because of his difficult schedule. There were a couple of things. He was Orthodox Jewish, and so he has to be home by sundown on Fridays, and he can't work Saturdays. And from what I've read, this production schedule was really intense. Most TV shows were shooting 6 days, but they were doing 7. And even with 7 days, they were always going over schedule, and they always have to go back and shoot a bunch of different inserts and everything. So I think that got in the way for them. And then there was also a story later in the season where where Stephen Hill, who plays Briggs, was very difficult about some scene and did not want to do this certain scene. And so that I think they just over the year were having trouble with him.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, one of them is his religion, which is not really fair to be mad at someone about. But it sounds like he also was difficult.
Okay.
But he went on to be. I think he took like 10 years off after this show. But he was on, what was it, Law & Order?
Oh, is that right?
I think he was on Law & Order for like 10 years.
Oh, wow.
If you see him as an old man, you'll recognize him.
I have to look him up, yeah.
But this is the first episode, right, where he's really taken a back seat.
Yeah.
He kind of comes in at the beginning, comes in at the end, and this other guy steps forward and does a lot of the mission with Cinnamon.
Yeah. What I like about it is it's basically about kind of bankrupting an arms dealer,
right?
Who is going to fuel the revolution in an adjacent country,
right?
And it's a huge idea, but it's incredibly small because it's all about like this casino night, basically, and bankrupting him from being able to get those guns to the revolutionaries in the adjacent country, right?
Yeah, so they're just trying to scheme all these ways to, in one night, bankrupt the casino.
Yeah.
Which is shades of Ocean's 13.
Yeah.
Where they're bankrupting Al Pacino's casino.
Right.
And so I thought that was interesting that, and again, there's another Ocean's kind of homage, or,
It's sort of pseudo Monaco, the setting, the location, it's great, but the gags and everything are wonderful, and we talk about how at the end of they're marking all of these playing cards basically to cheat using these contact lenses and all this stuff, and then everything goes to hell at the end because the cards are sort of entered into the main bloodstream of all the cards, and they can't keep track of them. And
and it seems like it's the first episode where they've really brought in like heavy gadgetry.
Yeah,
she's got a gadget. Cinnamon has a gadget in her purse. And Peter Lupus is wearing this very heavy vest that's part of the technology, and they all have to be close to the roulette wheel.
Yeah.
And there's some great suspense, great moments.
There's all these cutaways to the new team member's watch, which he looks at.
The date on the watch is what is it doesn't show the date, it changes to the number that is actually going to be on the roulette wheel. What the winning number he'll see on his watch ahead of time. It's really cool.
And I really liked it's very simple, but I loved the lining of her fur coat as the way of getting the money out.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
So she puts it on, and it's really fantastic. It's a really cool episode that I think we both loved a lot.
It's cool how they're always a step ahead of you.
Yeah.
They sort of hint at the fur coat at the beginning, and you don't really know why, which is a lot of the element of a lot of those heist movies and everything, where they sort of hint at something important to the fur coat, but you don't understand what it is, and then at the end you see that they're loading up her fur coat with money, and it's just a really cool. They're always a step ahead of you, and it's really smart writing. I mean, it's crazy to think about making this show week to week.
Yeah.
They had over 20 episodes, or a year. And every week they have to churn these out.
Right.
It's crazy.
And you wanted to talk about the music of this episode.
Yes, the music in this episode is fantastic, I thought. I thought it was maybe the best episode music-wise, other than maybe the pilot.
Right.
And to me it felt like, they're in this foreign country, and they had some music themes that were specific to this country. And it sounded like Michael Giacchino's Ghost Protocol score.
Right.
Where he did specific themes to different countries. I thought that was really cool. I looked it up. This composer, Gerald Fried, did the music for this episode. And he actually did Stanley Kubrick's first 4 movies Fear and Desire, Killer's Kiss, The Killing, and Paths of Glory.
Right.
Which is awesome. And then he also did 12 episodes of the original Star Trek, and those themes that he did for Star Trek are still being used.
In movies.
If you look up just, on IMDb under soundtrack, you'll see there's a Vulcan theme that he did that's still being used. It was actually in the Transformers 3 that Leonard Nimoy did a voice in. So I think they used, and I think it was also in Star Trek Into Darkness, which Giacchino scored.
Wow.
So these themes that he's written 50 years ago are still being used.
That's crazy.
And to do Kubrick's first 4 movies too. I mean, this guy is awesome. I thought the music was a big driving force of what made this episode great.
Yeah.
I also loved how Barney gets a moment to shine in this episode.
Yeah.
There's like one of their first big setbacks. Barney just kind of steps forward and says, "Oh, I'll take care of this."
Yeah.
And he just walks out of the apartment and goes down into this arms dealer's apartment, pretends to be a different character, and kind of just buys them some time.
Right.
It was a really cool moment, I thought, for Barney.
We're always pushing for Barney to be the romantic lead or be the center of a mission or something. It might not have been.
He's kind of the Luther, though.
Yeah.
Luther doesn't get those chances either.
No.
Don't you want Luther to have?
I do. Yeah, I do.
I also noticed a lot of snap zooms.
Oh yeah.
And it looks like they were done in post. I think.
They're optical.
And they pushed in, but it sort of reminded me of some of the snap zooms that John Woo did in MI2.
Yeah. I don't know if that's intentional or not,
but I just thought it was cool. It was kind of a fun connection. And I think maybe my favorite part of this episode is that Cinnamon really gets to kick some ass at the end.
Yeah.
This is the first time I think she beats the crap out of a goon, and then gives this great look to the guy who's pretending to be her husband.
Right.
I thought that was really cool because you had talked about how she doesn't really get to do much.
Yeah.
But I think as the season goes on and future seasons, Barbara Bain gets to do a lot.
Well, that is a perfect segue into episode 7.
Yes.
Which has this amazing. I was watching it earlier and I was just like, wow, this is incredible that a lot of the episode 7 is her and Landau in this kind of romantic relationship. I mean, it's part of the mission, but it's like, but so much of it seems just for them.
Right. Well, it's Landau in a double role again.
Yes.
So her job is to go off and distract a guy who looks like Rollin Hand.
Right.
Because she goes through the voting registry to find someone who looks the most like Rollin Hand.
It's an incredibly convoluted episode.
But it's great. I mean, I think this is a really good episode too. She goes through the voting registry and finds a picture of a guy who looks enough like Rollin Hand that she knows he can impersonate this guy.
Yes.
That's the plot, I think. It was hard. It was kind of hard to follow. It was really they're like almost 2 steps ahead of you in this one.
Well,
and it was hard
this
to follow.
one is about it's about making sure that a populist candidate wins an election in a foreign country
where they're rigging the election.
Where they're rigging the dictator is rigging the election.
Yeah.
The kind of more socially conscious candidate they're trying to help win fairly.
Yeah. They just want to make the election fair.
Right.
So they're rigging the machines back to be fair.
Right.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
But she's got to take this guy and distract him and take him away. Right. Essentially. Right. But he looks like Rollin Hand, and she kind of develops almost a real romance with him. And at the end of the episode, you can see she sort of caught feelings for this guy. Right. Which you wonder, because there's a little bit of a flirtation between her and Rollin. Yeah. In the show, and so how much of it is it because this guy is sort of like Rollin? Right. Is that why she's sort of catching feelings? Right. Because she has to overtly pretend to have feelings for him in this act. Mm. As we've talked about before, so much of the old show is about filmmaking and acting. So she's acting this part, and then at the end they kind of imply that she might have had some feelings for this guy. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's cool. At the beginning of this episode, Briggs goes to the back of a truck at a lumber company. And this time, again, it's a variation. It's good afternoon, Mr. Briggs. And then at the end, it's still should you decide. We were talking about how in the movies it's should you choose to accept. We still haven't heard that wording. Right. It's still should you decide. And this one I thought was interesting. The guy says, you will disavow any knowledge of your actions. Oh. It's like putting it on Briggs. It's a self-disavowal. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I'd never heard that before. And then it says, please dispose of this recording as usual. Okay. So, and I don't remember what he did. I think that he burned it up or... He threw it in a fire. Yeah, okay. This episode, the music, again, you liked the music in this one. I really liked it. I thought the music was... I didn't think it was as good as 6. Sometimes I thought I got a little too much. Okay. But I did really like it. And this time the score was by Jack Urbont, and he only did one episode. This is the only episode he did. The other guy we talked about, Gerald Fried, did a bunch of episodes.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to seeing those other episodes that guy did. But this guy, Jack Urbont, he's actually Jacques, if you look him up. So I guess he's French. But he did the original Iron Man animated series theme from 1966.
Wow. Which
is featured in the first Iron Man movie.
Yeah.
That it's like Tony Stark. He's a cool guy.
I'm glad that you're not doing it, because then we would actually get sued, I think.
It's my rendition.
That's your rendition.
Legally different enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was cool. And he also did, he scored General Hospital for years, this guy.
It's got some very kind of brassy romantic stuff. And I think there's a cue that Giacchino references in MI3 when Maggie Q gets out of the Lamborghini.
You said that.
But I'm gonna find it, and maybe if I can find it, I'll put up the time codes on Twitter.
At the Vatican.
At the Vatican, when she gets out of the car, it's like this really brassy. It almost hard cuts to this really brassy. So I'll find it, and then I'll put the time codes on Twitter.
And we gotta get Giacchino on the show at some point.
Yeah.
And ask him about that.
Yeah, I think he'll have a lot to say.
Yeah, it'd be cool, because I think we're working on getting Lauren Balfe on the show.
Yeah.
I hope I'm pronouncing his name right.
Sure.
But he scored Fallout, and we're very excited that he wants to be on the show. So yeah, we're looking forward to that, and we'd love to get Giacchino and Elfman and
Joe Kramer.
You actually just talked to Elfman.
I did talk to Elfman, and he said that the first movie was one of the hardest jobs he's ever done, because it was all composed in 3 weeks or something. He said it was even quicker than Justice League. So
wow.
Yeah.
Another really cool thing in this episode, Barney gets shot.
For real. Because Barbara Bain got shot fake in the last one.
Yes, right.
Which again, she had like a squib.
Yeah. Which is cool. That was in 6, but in 7, Barney actually gets shot, and it's a huge setback.
Right.
This is the first time this has really happened, I think, where it's been something this serious.
Yeah.
And a doctor comes, and then the doctor wants to call for more help, and they hold the doctor hostage and they tell him we can't do that. And then Barney, a lot of the suspense in the whole finale of this episode is Barney barely staying conscious as he's fixing the machines to rig them back to normal.
Right.
And they're trying to sneak him in and out without getting caught. I thought the suspense in the end of this episode was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because the voting machines are literally like casino. Like, they're so kind of cartoony. It's really interesting. It's cool. Yeah. It's not like filling a punch card or whatever. It's it's a lever basically being pulled in either direction. But
yeah. Another thing I noticed in this episode too was the sweat.
Yeah.
Everybody was so sweaty.
Well,
it was like a hot
Latin American.
Yeah, I just thought but recently I was watching the Twilight Zone Blu-ray, which we've talked about on this show before.
Yeah.
There's the famous William Shatner episode, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Richard Donner directed that episode. Richard Donner, who did Superman, The Omen, all the Lethal Weapon movies, Goonies. He does a commentary and talks about sweat. And
really?
He talks about how he loves sweat and putting sweat on actors in these shows, and I think it's gotten me thinking about it more. And if you watch that famous episode of Twilight Zone, you can see all the sweat that's on Shatner, which is makes it more visceral, and this episode has that. Everybody is so sweaty.
Well, you're about to go make another TV show. Are you going to put your actors, are they going to be sweatier this season?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's going to be a lot more sweat.
Great. I love that. Anything else, or are we wrapped up for episodes?
Episodes 4 through 7.
4 through 7
are wrapped up, so we're gonna come back and visit. I think our next batch of episodes, actually, I think there's going to be 2 really famous ones.
Okay, I'm excited.
So I'm really excited to get into that. 2 of the most famous episodes we'll cover next time.
Do you know if your father has seen these episodes?
I would guess that my dad was 19
when these
were airing. These were airing on Saturday nights, which I think is kind of cool to think about.
There used to be shows on Saturday nights.
I know. I mean, you think about television back then, there were probably only 3 or 4 shows.
Yeah.
Or maybe 3 shows on Saturday night.
Yeah.
I would love to stay home on a Saturday night and watch a Mission Impossible episode.
Yeah, that would be great.
So my dad, if he was 19, was maybe checking these out.
Yeah.
Maybe? Or was he out partying?
Maybe
he would pregame watching Mission Impossible and then go out and party.
Oh, yeah. Has he listened to the show yet?
No.
Okay. Well, on that note, for Charles Hood, this is Drew Taylor, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcasts@gmail.com. If you'd like to watch the original Mission Impossible television show, all 7 seasons are currently available to stream on Amazon Prime. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.